What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Debbie Row YouTube channel. I know we've been doing heavy Debbie and heavy college football content, but we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to be going Dynasty buys today, looking at some buys right now in July, in the dead period kind of in your Dynasty leagues of some guys that I've been noticing, especially with this, our Discord has been asking about it, talking about trades that they've done that could possibly be buys right now. And we're going to be going through 3 players. It's a quick video looking at what their value is, real Dynasty trades. So trades that have happened, thanks to Fantasy Calc, looking at ADP right now and everything and above in Dynasty. So if you want to know who you should be buying out there, what are some good values out there for these 3 players, and maybe if you want to sell, what you could get for them, stick around, hit that like button, and we'll talk about it after the intro. All right, let's get through our Dynasty buys. Let's talk about what we are looking at there out at the market right now. And the first guy is Jameson Williams. We've talked about him before. Now, I know everybody's been telling you to buy him, but I will tell you right now, based on some of the deals that I've seen and some of the things that people have told in the Discord, I really feel like Jameson Williams is a buy, right? So when you're looking at overall what he is, yes, he has a 6-game suspension. I think that is built into his ADP right now. But when you're looking at it, he is still in college. He was one of the better wide receivers. He probably could have won the Heisman had Bryce Young not been on that team in terms of what he was able to do that season. But I think he had a shot for that. Remember, the only really person on that roster that I'm worried about catching passes is Amon-Ra St. Brown in the wide receiver room. I know Gibbs is going to be there. I have a spotlight coming out on Gibbs, and I am very excited for Gibbs there. But Jameson gives that offense something that they don't necessarily have, right? That deep threat that definitely can kind of take the top off the defenses, and he's going to be a fantasy asset that you want to own. And 6 games is not that much in fantasy. When we're talking about how the extra season kind of plays out, the extra game, when your playoffs start, you can still acquire Jameson. And that's the nice thing about Jameson. I think he's a buy for contenders and for rebuilding teams, right? So you have an opportunity to go buy a player either side, because I think if you're a contender, you have the assets to give up. If you're rebuilding, you can still grab Jameson, and he's still going to improve on value. If he just has a couple games after he comes back, he shoots up in value right away. When you look like, oh, hey, he had a couple average games, doesn't matter. His value is still going to go up. Now, when you're looking at his rank right now, Dynasty rank is wide receiver 25, but his ADP is wide receiver 39. So what is baked into that? I think a lot of it is just risk and team building. As teams are building in Dynasty, they don't want to add Jameson Williams to their team because they got to wait. And they don't want to wait because Dynasty managers are impatient, right? So ranks don't really actually correlate to what his value is right now. But imagine when we're talking about this, you take him as wide receiver 39, or you trade for him as like that perceived wide receiver 39. I do think he can get up into that wide receiver 25. And to be honest, he's probably a wide receiver 2, right? So there's a realistic possibility that he's sitting around 18 to 22 in that range as his ceiling once he kind of has that that maybe the season that we think of, or those few games that we think of that he could have. Now, in terms of what he's going for, Jameson Williams in a third for Jahan Dotson. Now, I do know there's some Dotson truthers out there, but what offense would you rather have in fantasy? The Lions or the Commanders? We don't know what that quarterback room is going to look like. We don't know what that team's going to look like next year, but we do know Jameson Williams is going to be on that roster, and we do know what Jared Goff's there. If they give him that extension with the weapons around him, we can bake in Jameson Williams. Plus, you get an asset now for him. This is where I'm talking about where the market is right now. Jameson Williams for $225 seconds. So that is a deal that happened on our Discord. I absolutely love this deal. And kind of like what we walked through and we talked about it. Hey, you can get Jameson Williams. If he has a good few games after he comes back from the suspension, he's going to be worth a first, right? So even if you do trade him for a first, maybe you want to move him, right? You want to get rid of them after that. You can still get a first back for him for 2 seconds. This is how you kind of can play. And I think there's a market manipulation that you can kind of take advantage of. And then Jameson Williams, Devin Singletary for Samaje Perine and Mike Williams. I'm smashing that side anyway. I like Devin Singletary. I think from his pass catching perspective and everything there, I'm going to be on that side. Now, next guy, Cam Akers. So when we're talking about Cam Akers, we're just talking about usage right now. And recently, Sean McVay talked about him and said, hey, we love this kid. He's going to be our guy. I think when you look at it from that perspective, it's going to be volume, right? And we need volume. And if you're looking around the league, they are devaluing the running back position. We know that. There's a big old controversy right now about all the running backs going on the franchise tag. Cam Akers is going to get volume this year. That's all you have to know. He's competing with Zach Evans, Kyron Williams, Ronnie Rivers, those guys in that roster. He's not competing with anybody that we necessarily need him to compete against. I really feel like Cam's going to step in and have that volume that he needs. They haven't talked about bringing anybody in. So if they're not going to bring anybody in, he's the guy. So that's what you have to realistically look at this. Now, as far as who's buying here, contender or rebuilder, obviously contender is going to be in there. But I do think that you can kind of, if you're in that middle, like we talked about retooling, where you think you can maybe retool your roster and kind of binge it a little bit and get going here this year, I do think Cam Akers is kind of that guy that you can go target. His running back, 22 right now in Dynasty rank, and his ADP kind of matches that, running back 21. I do think, though, he can be a high-end running back too, right? So when we think of him, he can be there. And he's only going to be 24, right? So he's 24 this year. He could have a 2 or 3 years, in Dynasty where you have a solid running back 2 on your roster. And he was the NFL's leading rusher. He averaged 85 yards per game the final 6 weeks of the season. So if he continues that, you could still get a high-end running back too for low-end running back prices. Now let's look at the calc. Let's look at what he's going for. Cam Akers in a 24 fourth, for Jaden Reed in a second. So this is where you have to really believe in Reed. I like the second here. I think the second in Akers is pretty close. So if you're giving a fourth for Reed, I understand probably the value side lands with Reed, but you're asking a lot of Reed, right? So Romeo Dubes, Christian Watson, everybody there to really make an impact this season, whereas Cam can make that impact for your dynasty team. So if you're a rebuilder and you want Reed in the second, that's fine. But how many rebuilding teams go after these wide receivers like Jaden Reed and they just don't get that value back? Cam Akers for Brian Robinson in a second. Again, I'm really out on Robinson, so it's really second. Hey, do you think that he can be a better player there? I'll take the shot on Cam, in my opinion, just based on his upside and his volume. And in this one, Cam Akers, Deontay in a second for DeAndre Swift. I like Swift. I'm a very big supporter of Swift. I don't hate this deal because I love Deontay in a second. And then you get Cam Akers in there. I mean, there's a realistic possibility where Cam Akers finishes ahead of DeAndre Swift this year. Now, I think DeAndre Swift is very good. There is a chance at running back 1. Hey, there's always a chance, right? But if Cam Akers finishes at running back 2, Deontay comes back up and finishes maybe low end wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. And in the 24 second, just the package alone, you probably make it back with Swift, right? So just based on that, I love that package, dude. I love this deal when I saw it. I couldn't believe this happened, but I do think that package is worth it for Swift. Now, but let's say you have Akers and Johnson a second and you want to go get Swift. There's your value, right? I don't think you need that. I think you probably could have put a third in there. But if that's the case, if that's what people are valuing Swift at right now, that's something that you can take advantage of. And the last one is Deontay Johnson. Got to throw my guy Deontay in here. I still think Deontay is getting undervalued right now out in leagues. So Dynasty rank is wide receiver 30. Dynasty ADP is 6th round, wide receiver 26. Possible ceiling, I think he is a low-end wide receiver 1. You have to look at what he did. He ranked 13th in target share last year, 10th in red zone targets. And just, overall, he's going to score touchdowns, right? You're going to get that back. He's going to be in there. I think he's a few touchdowns away from being back into that top 15 category at the wide receiver position. And then, hey, that's the guy that you want. Age 27, he's still got 2 or 3 years. When we're talking about his production status, he might move on next year. I don't think so. I think he's on this team. People are projecting Kenny Pickett to have a better year this year. So if he does, you're still getting a low-end wide receiver 1 at basically pretty close to wide receiver 3 prices. Now, what does his value look out there? Look at this value. Deontay Jolts for Dalton Schultz and a 23 third. Give me Deontay Johnson all day, right? So go check this out on Fantasy Calculator. I'm not making these up. These happen. Deontay Johnson for the 22 second and a 23 third. Give me that all day. Fantasy Calc, excuse me. So Deontay Johnson for a 23 second and a third. I will take the shot on Deontay all day for those prices because if Deontay does hit this year, he's worth a first to a contender, right? And then Deontay and a third for Javonte. I think this is the one that I wanted to show you guys. If you do believe Javonte is coming back, that knee's healthy, he's doing it, and you believe all those, I don't want to say lies out there, but the narrative around Javonte right now, that could be an interesting deal. Maybe you want a running back with an ACL tear and all the tears that he had in his knee, or you take Deontay and you take that upside there at that position and you get an asset back, right? So I'm just trying to give you guys kind of the overview of what these guys are. So give you an idea of what those prices are. Those are 3 guys that I think are getting undervalued in the dynasty market right now, of guys that you maybe can go grab. So appreciate you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys go out, use this. Again, you can come join our Patreon for our Discord. We talk about this stuff. Get in there on the trades and everything there, or just use those great resources out that I mentioned, Fantasy Calc and DLF ADP. They talk about that. And in our rankings. So at Football Guys, we have our rankings there. I also have my rankings on the Patreon. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time.